Hello again. The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie, and all of the First Law series, the first trilogy, the four standalones, the second trilogy, so-called Age of Madness trilogy. I finished it all, and this audio blog, I wanted to do it for a long time now. I must confess, it's now around 2 to 3 weeks since I finished the series, and it's all starting to fade into the past. So, time to talk about it now or never. Yes, so we see a satisfying conclusion of the story and plot lines of the first two books, which are a little hatred and the trouble with peace in The Wisdom of Crowds. Yes, and we see Joe Abercrombie go all guns blazing, so to speak, into his interpretation of the industrial and the French, the political revolution in the First Law world, in Edouard, the capital city, and we see mad people taking the power. Several regime changes, very interesting, bloody, terrifying plot twists. We see, which was very sad, major characters deceasing, getting executed, sacrificing themselves. Well, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but well, we see the end of one of the longest running characters in the series, fan favorite. And yes, it was sad, but well, he went out in a very typical way, in a heroic way. He fought to the death and sacrificed himself for what he believed in order to achieve his goals. Was very cool. We see Rika again growing as a character, becoming a major power, more powerful than Black Dow and Black Colder even. She rules the North. That was cool, very cool. And yeah, Savine and Orso. Well, I'm not going to spoil too much here, but Joe Abercrombie just writes incredibly believable characters, and the relations of the characters, they are his main focus. The world of Edouard and Styria and the North, and it's all fine. It is more or less developed over the span of this 10-book series. Well, we never got the real idea about Styria, which I found a little sad, given that Best Served Cold is my overall favorite book in the series. Yeah, but the world, it's okay. Honestly, now, all right, let's make the transition from the Wisdom of Crowds to reflecting all 10 books. And what I would say is that here characters and the character relations are in the focus. Instead of, let's say, Grandmaster Tolkien developing Middle Earth and giving a very deep and just senseful. It makes sense how he developed all the different ages of Middle Earth and this world. Joe Abercrombie is different. In the first trilogy, the original First Law trilogy, the blade itself before they are hanged and last argument of kings, I would read this as a sarcastic commentary on the fantasy genre overall. Certainly was very cool, and but it's not high fantasy. There are no dragons, there's no elves. The only thing we got is as a kind of zombie, these flatheads, and they are used very sparsely, and they don't play any role at all over the course of the series. It's not like the White Walkers in George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series, which are these. They are the major threat to the realms of man. But here, the fantasy creatures, the flathead, the zombie kinds, and there's even more sparsely the spirit realm. I mean, this is interesting because the title First Law itself, it derives from this idea of the spirit realm granting you supernatural powers and these laws that you only get this supernatural, superhuman powers if you eat the flesh of other men. So if you become a cannibal, and it plays the title giving role, not so much. There's only a couple of occasions where spirits appear. There's the Logan, the Bloody Nine. He can. I think there's in the first trilogy, maybe book 2. I'm not sure. He has a small chat with the spirits and also Bias. He in the last argument of kings, was it? No, it was before they are hanged, when Bias, Logan, and Giselle and Pharaoh, when they are on their quest into the ancient West to search for this object of power, and there's also a chat with Spirit, and this was very cool. How Bias is just very enraged with the Spirit because it's just talking a bunch of not understandable bullshit. Yeah, but that's more or less it with classical high fantasy. This is more kind of realpolitik fantasy, low fantasy series, focusing more on bloody battles and on these real major power moments. It's all about Bias. Bias. I'm sorry. I will name this audio blog accordingly, so not to give anything away. But Bias, he is the real mastermind behind the Union, and he's also one of the few characters appearing more or less in all of the books. Certainly in the first trilogy, more as a protagonist, and in the later books, he plays a kind of background role. But he's always there, and he plots and he schemes and he does everything he can. He's not a nice guy. He's very much an anti-Gandalf because he is very self-serving. He, if he were Magic the Gathering legendary creature card, he certainly would have color identity of black in him, certainly, because he is very self-serving and he sacrifices everything and everyone in order to achieve his goals. So yeah, that's the first Law series, certainly focusing more on the characters and more on the character relations, and this is really something I didn't experience before while reading fantasy books, specular fiction books, even if you're willing. I mean, science fiction, specular fiction. It's a little bit a looser term. It is focused more on the macro scale, on the level of society, but fantasy is usually on a very personal level. And Joe Abercrombie, he's a real master of this. His characters are so well crafted, so believable, so memorable and unique. This really what sets the series apart for me. And yes, we see a change of character cast in the process of the series, which just shows because all of them are believable and unique, and it's just plain fun reading these characters, how they develop. And yes, the first three books kind of establish the legendaries, the legendary background, the history of the world. If you go through the rest of the series, the Bloody Nine, wow, it's a mystical character. He's mentioned by so many people in this world, kind of like a boogeyman even. And well, not to give anything away, but we don't see him at all in the Age of Madness trilogy. But other characters take the spotlight, and they get their own time to shine. It's not a bad thing. It just shows that yeah, maybe it's even kind of Joe Abercrombie's way to broaden the world, to widen the horizon. He's not doing it with detailed descriptions of the history of Edua and the other regions. And no, he introduces more and more characters, but also references back to older characters. And yes, it's only the secondary and the tertiary characters here are usually those that are the small people. I mean, in the second trilogy, there's several chapters focusing on the small people, how they live through this riot, when there's a factory strike and the workers go and burn everything down. Introduction of the burners and the breakers, or when there's this battle at Stauffenberg, I think it's called, where Orso and Savine try to dethrone Orso, and it's just a bloody battle. It's stabbing and killing, and yeah, Joe Abercrombie, he lets you see it through the eyes of the shock trooper, of the swordsman in the front row. And yeah, this is very bloody. He also has, Joe Abercrombie has this terrifying, still fantastic way of fight scenes, action scenes. It's very bloody, very believable. It shows you how easily life is taken, and in the end, we're all back to the mud, if you like. So this is what First Law series has in common with Song of Ice and Fire. It really shows you that all these power plays and gambling and the powerful people, grabbing for more power, waging wars, how they don't care a little bit about the life of the individual soldier, of the women, of the children, of all those suffering from these senseless wars for egoistic rulers just trying to secure their grandeur, their place in history. And here we have a connection to the real world. Just open your eyes, switch on the news, and well, there's a lot of these characters, unfortunately, and they are sacrificing tens of thousands of people for their personal gains. Yeah. So need to bring this to a finish. The First Law series, the four standalones, the second Age of Madness trilogy, all of these were exceptional. They have very high standard of characters, of story, the plots, the character interactions. It's just very believable. It's just a pleasure to read these and to go through the world. You age with the world. You know the references in the former in the later books that reference back to the former books. This is something I always enjoy in series. For example, Dune. Dune has this feeling that you grow with the world. Obviously, Song of Ice and Fire has it. So it's always good to see this in a series, and I can only highly recommend this. It has to be one of my favorite series, certainly. I wouldn't call it my favorite fantasy series because it's not as much fantasy as you would expect. It's very gritty, bloody realpolitik, and yeah, if you're into this grim dark, this is the definitive work. And I have to say, Joe Abercrombie, it's now a name I will follow for the rest of my life. And he has another trilogy that is not related to the First Law. It's kind of young adult trilogy. I might look into it in the future. Honestly, young adult, it's not so enticing for me, but I might give it a chance in the future. And certainly, if he writes more books in the First Law world, count me in. If he develops another world or just write a singleton book, I'm definitely in. It doesn't have to be this medieval fantasy, whatever. As I learned in the second trilogy, he's also very good at showing you, really letting you feel, giving you a perspective of what the industrial and the French Revolution, what they meant for the people living in these times. And yeah, it's those are the foundations of modernity as we know it today. But they contained horrors, and his characters live through these horrors, and he has a very, very good way of making those horrors visible to the reader. So Joe Abercrombie, he's on my list now. I will watch what he writes, and I will check it, and that was amazing. So I really have to wrap this up. If you honestly made it through the whole audio blog, thanks a lot, and we'll see what's next. Bye bye.